Hello and welcome to the Mount Gretna School of Arts lecture series hosted here in the Hall of Pennsylvania Chautauqua's Hall of Philosophy. I am Jay Noble, the Executive Director of Mount Gretna School of Art. And I would also like to thank Vincent Strout for his support of the lecture series and Purpose One Visual Marketing, one of our corporate sponsors. For those of you who don't know, Mount Gretna School of Art is a 7-week intensive program where students get to be immersed every day, all day in a kind of singular focus on connecting with nature outside and learning about seeing and painting. Another big thing that's important to us is our ability to pay scholarship system. So we really do work hard. When we started the school, I was like, this is what I want to do, because I had so many students get into programs like I wanted to do here, and then come up to me and say they couldn't pay. So I'm really proud of that. And I'd also like to, being here in the Hall of Philosophy underscores the unique community we have as a school. I know the students feel it, sharing meals together and going out and being in the same rhythm together with the classes, but also the way we live right next door to the neighbors in Mount Gretna who really embrace and support the students. So I'm going to shift now to introduce Amber Scoon, who's here. Who I'm wearing my Chautauqua School of Art t-shirt, which was this really awesome school for many, many years. And I know Amber taught there and went there as a student, just like me. So Amber Scoon makes art, books, and events. She is from Pelham, Massachusetts. She received her Bachelor of Science from New York University, her MFA in painting from American University's 2-year program in Italy, which still looms large in a lot of what she talks about, and her PhD in philosophy and art and critical thought from the European Graduate School in Switzerland. Amber is a John Berger Fellow at the European Graduate School. And for those of you who don't know, John Berger is a writer that really wrote a lot of things about visual thinking and art that we were all reading in the 90s. And still, she's published Quantum Art. In 2017, Amber published 3 books, the second revised edition of Quantum Art called Quantum Art, Mimesis, Uncertainty, and Infinite, Conversations and Uncertainty, a collection of essays inspired by conversations with heroes, and question mark, co-written with the artist Glenn Goldberg, who will be here on Friday. In 2020, Amber published Letters to John Berger, and she's here today to cap it all off. Welcome, Amber.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited to be here. I want to dedicate this talk to Ophir Agassi, who has been a teacher here at Lee and was a colleague of mine at my very first year at Chautauqua in New York State. And he introduced me to alabaster Assyrian reliefs, which ended up changing my life. And we'll talk about that. So the work that you're going to see is a collaboration between myself and a woman named Margaret, who you do not know. And I met her through my work with eChrome. So I'm going to give you a little background, and then I promise we will look at images. So eChrome is this little organization that works under the umbrella of the United Nations. And I ended up working for them from the beginning of pandemic in Italy until now. And I basically, like many of you maybe thought being in academia and being a teacher is really a racket. I've got to get out of this. What do? I will work for the UN. This is all true. In case any of you have seen other lectures in which I made up crazy stories, this is true. So I joined up with a master's program in cultural heritage. I started taking classes online during the pandemic because all classes went online. So suddenly I could go to school in Italy because, of course, I need more schooling because I finished my PhD, so got to go back. So I got there and they gave me a choice of projects, and what I really wanted to do was work on this project in Mosul. Mosul is an alabaster city. The architecture of the city is built entirely out of the stone alabaster that many artists might know as something that we carve and make sculptures out of. But it's the only city in the world in which the building blocks of the city are made out of alabaster. It was destroyed in the war with ISIS and then in the liberation of Mosul. The old city looks like that. So my job, long story short, I'm getting it. My job was to speak with young people on the ground in Mosul who are learning how to rebuild their city. So as you can imagine, in a war zone, people have died, people have left, people have migrated. So you've got young people who don't yet have the skills, but who want to rebuild their city. So they're learning skills, they're learning alabaster carving, they're learning architecture, they're learning engineering. But also it's really complicated because it's a very old city. And you can't just say the building was built like this, so we'll fix it. The building was built like that, and then it changed, and then it changed, and then it changed, and then it changed. And everyone has a different idea of how they want their building to be. So I was speaking to young people, asking them, how do you want to rebuild your city? What skills do you need? And then finding alabaster specialists across the world to try to help them rebuild this alabaster city. And a really awesome thing was everyone was like, well, just find some other city that's built out of alabaster. Well, in fact, there's no other city in the world built out of alabaster. And when you talk to alabaster experts, they say you can't build exterior buildings in alabaster. It's malleable. It will disintegrate. But here you have a city that's been standing for 1,000+ years. So, okay, so this is the culmination of my research. I just wanted to start there so you get to see a picture of the city of Mosul, 2017, photographed by Al-Barundi. Okay, so that's just a detail to show you some of the carvings. So the building blocks themselves, just like if you've been in a European city and the buildings are built out of stone, except that stone is not granite or limestone, it's alabaster. And then these gorgeous carvings, really intricate, beautiful drawings are in the architecture also. And there is kind of your best case scenario. On the right, you see a bit of alabaster that's being restored. And this picture taken by one of the people on the ground who worked with me. And he actually, managed to completely restore that. So that's the arch and the keystone. It's being fixed on the right. It's fixed on the left. Okay, so all of that is just to tell you how I met this woman, Margaret, who ended up being an alabaster specialist. Okay, so Margaret is in her 90s, and I haven't been able to tell this story until now because she hasn't given me permission. So this is a collaboration between myself and this woman who is, amongst other things, an alabaster specialist. And she had, when I met her, read my book, which was like amazing to me because who wants to read about quantum physics and the history of philosophy? But that's my book. So she had read my book. We worked together a lot, really closely. And at one point she asked me if I would help her to reconstruct her memories. So she was one of the first women to work with the United Nations. She speaks 5 languages. She had lived in Italy, Southeast Asia, Germany, the United States. Her story is really long and interesting, but at some point she started to lose her memories. She'd seen nearly every doctor. She doesn't have dementia. She doesn't have Alzheimer's. She tells you that she can't remember anything, but she's a treasure trove of information. And so, like this project, we will ask her if she has information about how to make alabaster work in this way. And she'll say no, but then she'll take a guess. And in fact, she knows all kinds of things. So this is kind of how her memory works. She says, I don't remember anything. And then the doctor or your friend or whoever will say, can you take a guess? And in fact, she knows everything. So in frustration, she'd come to me and said, look, I basically can't remember things past the age of 20 or 30. And I've seen pictures, it doesn't mean anything to me. Can you help reconstruct my memories? I said, there's no way that I'm going to make paintings that look like what you saw. And she just asked me to try. So what you see now are the things that I attempted to reconstruct from listening to her talk. So the first thing that we talked about was this explosion that she witnessed somewhere in Southeast Asia, somewhere in the 40s, which doctors had told her this was a traumatic case, and after this, your memory got screwed up. She is convinced that this was not a traumatic case at all. Nonetheless, we started there because she had seen so many doctors that had told her you have to do EMDR, you have to do psychoanalysis, you have to do meditation, you have to remember all these events. She'd been through all that. She said, look, I'm in my 90s, I'm not going to live that much longer. I want to see these things. So this is the first event, and it's an explosion. Now, she's not happy with it because it's not dark enough, but you're just seeing one of many that I tried to make for her. When I make it darker, she says, but I can't see the stairs. I made it like this. She says it's not dark enough. So we spent almost a year on that. So the things she told me, there's stairs, there's boats, and you have to be able to see about 3 city blocks. So that's what that is, and it's all paper. Okay, so the next thing that she remembers clearly is visiting this magical city. And she was convinced that this actually was in her imagination, because this magical city, and part of my job was to listen to her without really asking questions. Because you can imagine, if anyone's been through therapy, there's lots of questions. My job is really just to listen and only to ask questions like, what color is it? So she had visited this magical city, she told me, where everybody walked like 2 inches off the ground. And everyone was just unbelievably gorgeous, in her words, so sexy. She was in her 20s. And every door led to some secret passageway. So she was pretty convinced that she had never visited this city, that she had made it up. So it wasn't my job to ask what's real and what's not real. I just tried to make her memory. So we made it in pencil, and then she decided that it was blue. So as you can see, it's blue. So she was fairly satisfied with that. We actually went back into her mother's house, found film that was from this time period, developed it, got this, which makes us believe that she actually was at a city that looks just like this. So that was kind of interesting.
What's the name of the city?
She does not remember. It's in Italy. We do know that this decade she was in Italy. So she has lived a completely functional life. So other people can recollect, this is where you live, this is the job you did, this is the family that you made, etc. But she went to this place by herself. So in her mind, she made it up, but she did not, because we have this image. So all the while that she's talking, I'm taking notes and making drawings. So this is, I thought, like an important note that she made. So I'm going to read this to you. She said, then I realized that I've imagined my whole life and I'm not alive. But worse, I'm also not dead. I'm completely untethered to the earth, but I'm also trapped. Even dying won't release me. That is the panic. It does not arrive through my thoughts and words. I have controlled them. I've guided them. It arrives through my body, especially as the sun goes down in the winter. So she talked a lot about nighttime. And that drawing on the right is a memory of the sun going down in the winter. And there it is again. She was, again, not happy because it's not dark enough. When I make it darker, she tells me she can't see the things. Okay, and then another note that I wrote from her talking, she says, so I woke up from my dream world and everyone said, it isn't real, you must know. and I forgot the dream, and that took practice. And I lived my daytime life. But then I went to sleep and I woke up in my dream life. And there they said, you know, your daytime life, it isn't real. I forget my life. It also took practice, and I lived my dream life. And there's another drawing from this sort of nighttime memories that she has. And another drawing, nighttime memories. And another. This one she was actually happy with. Okay, so then she asked me to help her construct a timeline to try to figure out when things happened, which I thought was a great idea. And I started in like the 1900s because she's in her 90s. I don't know exactly when she's born. And she said, no, you have to start at the beginning of the earth. So I was like, okay, this is going to take us a really long time. So that is a timeline because 4.5 million years ago, Earth is born. It's not done. But she said something really interesting in the middle of making this timeline. She said, before I was born, I was old. I was a grandmother and I remember. And she said these things like, it's no big deal, but I thought that's pretty interesting. Okay, so I asked her about that. And I think that therapists had talked to her about it and like maybe made her feel like she was crazy. So she didn't really want to discuss it. But it turned out that she had tons of memories from before she was born. Fascinating, right? And so I asked her when she had these memories. She said, you know, from as early as she can remember until maybe like 8. And I asked her, you know, do you think you imagined it? And she said, no, I really distinctly remember the sensation of remembering. So I was like, great. Do you still have any memories? Yes. So she remembers this grandmother from before she was born. And so that is my first drawing on the left of this grandmother. And it turns out she has so much information about this grandmother. So one of the things about this grandmother is that she lived in a circular fort. So this is my drawing of the circular fort. She was kind of not happy with it because it was made out of like trees, you know, not building materials. Nonetheless, I couldn't make trees do that in my drawing. But that was sort of the idea. So then we built it for her. And I say we because my husband built it. So from the drawing, my husband built this thing, which is the correct size and shape, although not made naturally out of trees that just happen to do that. But she was pretty happy about that. That's looking straight up at it into the sky. And then so I started making more drawings of this grandmother. So that's like big. It's like 3 foot by 3 foot. And then we put the grandmother in the space. And as I put the grandmother in the space, she had all this information. There's this other kneeling woman. There's this weaving. There are these niches. There's a woman in a boat. And I'm just drawing them as she is telling me, which was actually great fun. Just a detail, and the weaving. And I'm making nothing up. She has all of the color, the size, the form, everything. Okay, so as we're talking about this grandmother that she remembers from before she was born, that she had all these details about, she said, you know, I buried a time capsule up around this time. And I gave a map to my mom. And I'm like, what? I need to see this time capsule. So we go amongst her mom's things. Sure enough, there's a time capsule. Well, sorry, there's a map with a little note that says, like, dear mom, give this to me when I'm older, in her little handwriting. And there's the map. And we go out and find the place, which is going to be the tree. And we dig and we find the time capsule. The feather was in the time capsule. Okay, so here's some of the stuff from the time capsule. She was like not that impressed. I was ecstatic. There's a drawing from the time capsule that she made. It says that it's like she was 5 on the back of this drawing. These were little, like pockets that have been sewn that were in the time capsule, and inside them there are special stones. These are just some details from the things in the time capsule. Okay, so I'll get to why they end up attached to the paintings in a moment. And we're going to move to this one. Okay, so inside the time capsule is a letter. The letter is written in several languages, and some of it we cannot understand. Like maybe she made up a language. She said she's 6. I think she must have been like 12, just from the way that the letter is written. So we spent some time translating, and I'm going to read you the letter now. When I read the letter, I'm supposed to wear a translator hat. So my daughter's going to give me a hat, which we made. Thank you. Some of the letters disjointed because we don't understand all of the words, but this is the painting that we made after the letter, so you can see it as they read. Dear me, I was out in the woods when a crow came to me and gave me this news. A tree woman has appeared in our woods. Can I meet her? I asked. She appears in the blue light. I climbed to my tree between the evening and the nighttime, when those trees are black velvet and the sky is that brilliant blue. A mist set in, as if we were in an ocean of rain. And through the trees, as far as I could call out, appeared a woman. She wore a flat-topped hat and a dress made of feathers that were maybe leaves. And she said, "You should be wearing your translator's hat. You know, it lets people know. Please don't interrupt. I'm listening to the trees and the rocks and the birds and the wind, and they have so much to say, and I'm trying to translate." And she said, "Don't forget that you can fly." "I can only really glide," I said. "Yes, of course, you're related to the pelican." "I am, of course. But why are you alone?" "I escaped the fire by flying very high above the clouds and by flying underneath the water." "But will that happen to me?" I said. "But don't you remember it?" she said. "Before you were born, you were very, very old. Not 2,000 years old, not a baby excited to name everything. Tree, rock. No, you were millions of years old. And you know how to eat the sun and give birth, and you know how to die and to translate." "But what do you think I'm translating?" I asked. She said, "The images are books that you can hide stuff inside of." "What things?" I said. She said, "Time is a ripple and a cloud, and the events are just the moments that you remember. But you also see the wave. You know, the events don't stack up like a pyramid. First, you see the world and you say, 'World.' And then you see yourself seeing the world and you say, 'There's me seeing the world.' And now there are 2 of you. Both of you are being with the world. When you imagined yourself outside of you to see yourself, you create the world. It's so exciting. But you also ripped the world. You tore it and it hurts. And you translate. Your job now is to be present at the death and the birth of the world, to awaken. But how? I asked her. Remember to wear your hat, she said. That's it. She left. The next day, I told everything to the crows, and now I will bury this letter. Goodbye. Okay, so we made this painting, and then I'll show you the rest of the things we made after this letter. So because the images are books that you hide stuff inside of, we basically attach the paintings together with hinges, and we put stuff inside. So that's one painting, 2 sides of it. That's the spine of it, and there's the inside. So there's the little bags with the rocks, and there's some of the objects from inside the time capsule on the left. And then here's the woman that she saw in the rain on the one side. So these are figures that sort of came out from after talking about this letter. And the bottom left, it says, when I was young, I understood the crows, because she later told me that she went to that tree every day and listened to the crows every day, as if that was totally normal. So all the notes that I took from talking to her, I collected into this book, and we decided to put this book inside the paintings. So there's the book inside. There's the bottom doors open. There's one of the drawings from inside. Another drawing from inside. And then here's pages from the book. You've seen some of them. I'll just read you this little bit on the left. She didn't know that she spoke bird song and human words. She only understood that they were two languages because I could not understand the bird song, so she began to translate. Another thing she told me about sitting out there listening to the crows. Okay, so this is the last one that came out, and it says to be present at the death and birth of the world to awaken, and that's from the letter that she wrote to herself. And these are all figures that she started telling me about. It was as if this letter unlocked images. I don't know if they're memories or images, but she described them and I painted them. And this is a detail. It's a bird on the shoulder, another bird, flowers, a rabbit, a woman and a snake, figure, kneeling figures. Okay, and there's all of the paintings, stacked to become books. And at this point, she wanted me to make a gigantic bookshelf for them. And then she decided that, in fact, these paintings need to create like some kind of structure, like a fort. I don't know if I can do that. But that's as far as we got. That's the end. I made it. So we do questions now, Jim?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, this is kind of a nuts and bolty kind of question, but
Yeah.
I'm very interested in it. I noticed some Mycenaean and some Sumerian figures. When she described those figures to you, did she say Mycenaean or Sumerian, or it was your knowledge of like art history, like you brought it out, or?
So I'm saying to her, what it sounds like you're describing is this figure from ancient Mesopotamia. And then I'm drawing figures that are inspired by those figures that I had seen. And she said, yes, that's it.
Okay.
Had she seen all those in her youth and she's remembering them? Did they just look like them? I don't know. But yes, you're right. So some of those figures are inspired.
There was an Olmec one.
Yep.
Amazing.
Thank you.
I have two thoughts, a thought and a question. One is that what's so wonderful about this work is that this woman, who it sounds like people were saying you're crazy, you need to figure this out, all the work you've done with her has elevated what she's going through to a poetic and beautiful and very valid experience, which I think is so bravo. And also, wow, that's so much time. And you said at the beginning how you met, but can you say again, like how you decided to fully engage with all of this time with this woman?
So it was the beginning of the pandemic. We met each other through working through the UN. She approached me and she had already read my book. I didn't realize it was going to be this ginormous of a project. I thought, like, I'll make some nighttime drawings for you. My students know I like drawing at night. But then it was fascinating. And I was kind of in this really like, let's switch gears kind of place in my life. So we just did it. It just happened. I didn't say, like, let's do this for 5 years. No, but it did happen.
Incredible. And then last question,
Yeah.
she's still alive?
Yes.
Wow. She's how old now?
She was something when she was born, but she's got to be in her 90s from the things she's told me about.
What about the proposal? How the first picture was so disturbing? Your involvement with helping them restore it. That
Working with Mosul's been the most heartwarming, amazing thing. They're well on their way. Like large parts of the city look absolutely beautiful. People have learned to carve stone that would never have learned to carve stone. There's all this excitement about their history that maybe they sort of knew, but not in such detail. The program with ECRON was funded for 3 years, so it has ended. But what it did was bring in specialists and workshops to teach them how to approach a disaster scene so as not to get hurt, right? To like walk into the rubble so as not to get hurt, to survey it, to rebuild it, engineers, and then to carve it. I only worked with the folks that were learning to carve, but now they are doing it on their own. So it's as much of a happy story as you could imagine. I'm still in touch with them. I send them these drawings. They actually just sent me on their work computer in Mosul. They have a desktop that has my drawings that are the figures that look like they're from ancient Assyria. So I'm in touch with them all the time. They said it's hotter than hell, but otherwise they're doing well. I had to do all kinds of interesting translating because folks on the ground speak Arabic, French, English. ECROM is based in Italy, which is how I got in touch with them. So there's Italians, and then the alabaster specialists are from all over the world. So German speakers, Finnish speakers, somebody from Asia. So it's fascinating. I'm still in touch with them, but I'm not working with them. I'm back to teaching. But Mosul is doing well. I want to visit someday.
I have two-part question. The first question I was wondering about was when you mentioned about your friend just remembering and forgetting like waking life and dream life and how that took a practice. Did she share like how she practiced that or how she came to that place?
She said that it took her many, many years. She kind of didn't have a very good opinion. She had been to therapy, right? Because her memory doesn't work. She needs help. The doctors always sent her on. She saw a neurologist, saw an immunologist, she had got a rheumatologist, she had MRIs. They said she had a brain tumor. They all these things and eventually sent her on to therapists who, in her opinion, did not help her. So what she did for herself was to practice waking up and saying, now I'm in my waking life. I'm going to let go of my dream life. And in her dream life saying, now I'm in my dream life, I'm going to let go of my waking life. I can only imagine that in that case, you're never really resting. It's like she's always awake, and maybe that's affecting her ability to recall her memories, but I'm not a doctor, I don't know.
No, it just reminds me of
Lucid dreaming?
Yeah.
I mean, she doesn't say that, but it sounds kind of like that.
Yeah.
Actually, kind of also like dolphins.
We'll wait till say this again. I don't know this.
So dolphins, when dolphins they're swimming all the time and they're mammals who have to breathe. So when they sleep, they actually only sleep like part of their brain falls asleep so they can continue doing what they do.
Interesting.
And then the second question I have is in reference to the title of your talk, of Barbarian Mother, if you could speak of that, if it has to do with like the mother of creation and destruction.
So when she was describing the grandmother from before she was born, I'm looking at images from art history because I'm not a magical genius. I cannot just, she's telling me what they look like. I'm looking at images. So one of the images that I happened upon that made her say, yep, that's it, is a tiny sculpture from the Capitoline Museum that's never on view, but I found it in their catalog, that's called the Barbarian Woman. And she is a sculpture made in the ancient Roman Empire of a woman that was colonized and sold into slavery to be a wet nurse. she is called the Barbarian woman because they called her that, right? And she has 2 children that are not her own children that she would have been nursing. And they literally carried her around the city in a procession to celebrate. Look how awesome we are. We're victorious. We have taken these slaves. So it's called that because the first person that jogged her memory, the first image, was based off from that sculpture. And if you look in the Capitoline Museum's archive, she's called Barbarian with her. Yeah, and she has these 2 children with her.
Thank you so much. It was really cool to see like the transition from reconstructing like the city of Mosul and then to reconstructing Margaret's memories. And I was really struck by something that you read. I think it was in the letter that you read, where it said, first you see the world and then you see yourself in the world. And I wonder, like, as a philosopher, if you had any kind of interpretation of that and what it means about human consciousness, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's why she and I connected so strongly, the fact that she had read my book. So I have a working theory that consciousness arises from that very moment in which, and I think some drawers and painters can recognize the sensation, but I often think all children go through it, in which they're not aware of themselves. So imagine either you as a drawer or painter in the world or a child is just looking at the world and you see just the world. And then you have this moment, oh, I'm here looking at the world. And in order to do that, I'm here looking at the world, I believe that you literally have to create in your imagination a second you that goes, there's me looking at the world. And I think it's actually that moment that creates consciousness. And I think that the whole world is doing it, the rocks, the trees, the animals, the people, everything. And I think it is both ecstatic and beautiful and terrifying or tragic, because you are separating from the world. It's this moment in which you're torn apart from it. But then also so exciting, as any painter knows, it's an exciting moment. So that's my philosophical interpretation of it. And if you're interested in that, you should read Quantum Art, because that's what it's all about. Scientists don't agree with me, just so you know. You don't need to go out in the world and say, Amber said this, I'm not a scientist. But that's what it feels like from being an artist.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What did you learn, maybe about yourself and about the larger world through this process of working with Margaret?
That's probably the hardest question to answer. I myself have fears of the dark. And a lot of her memories happen at the moment where the evening becomes night. So if I learned something positive, it is that she was not afraid to tell me about those very dark moments at all. And that seemed to free her. I think it helped that I was happy to listen to her and I wasn't trying to figure her out. I was just like listening. So my hope for myself is that I would be less fearful of the dark and listening to how she dealt with it. But I'm not there at all. I'm still working with her. She's really like a hero in my mind. So yeah, I don't have a very good answer. I'm learning from her. I don't think I've learned.
And the larger world's response to her and people such as her?
So, I mean, she's called in for projects because she has incredible knowledge. She has 2 PhDs. She speaks 6 languages. She has witnessed like every major event in the world. But she's kind of reticent because she is sometimes treated a little bit as a crazy person, you know. But in this situation, when Ebron is really small, really informal, really kind to people, like, you know, just get her on the phone, like, do you want to tell us, do you know something about this? And she would share. So I would say the world is fascinated by her, but that does not feel very nice to her. She just kind of wants to be normal. So how's the world response to her? Respectful, but in a fascinating, because you're so strange kind of way. The doctors have studied her endlessly. She's kind of done with that. They still want to, you know, look at her brain, and she's like, no, thank you. She's also in great shape, never taking any medicine. She's in her 90s. There's nothing wrong with her at all. Maybe she's going to live to be 120. So the world has been respectful, but kind of in that way where she's othered. She's weird. She doesn't love that. But she keeps kind of a small crew. So I feel so honored to have worked with her. And she knew Iraq. She had been in Iraq during the Iraq War. She knew Mosul. She knew like the neighborhood. She could say, well, go around that corner. There's a library there. Amazing.
I just wondered if you will ever write a book about this experience, or if she would let you do that, because it's so fascinating. I wish I could retain all the details, and I think there's so much depth there, in so many directions that it goes. Like, you can go to Eastern religion, you can go to Jungian psychology, you can go to dream work, which is a plethora of possibilities.
I don't know if she wants me to do that or not. She just gave me permission to share the story. So yes, that would be so great. I don't know if she wants me to.
Is the artwork available to be seen?
The artwork is gifted to her. But I have the book of the little drawings, and I brought it here to share with students or who are Chautauquans. So I have that.
Amber.
Hi.
I was just wondering, this is kind of all about this idea about a recollection or having it in a book. Wondering if you could like paint a picture of what it was like talking to her, like how, like I would love to see like a documentary or something of like this conversation at her table, you know, and like I'm trying to kind of get a picture of if she was like hesitant to share these stories, or if it was like uplifting for her when she was talking about it, or cry at her or something like that, you know?
It went in a wave like, I don't remember. I can't tell you anything. This is upsetting. I don't know why I even asked you to try to visualize my memories. This is not going to work. To a little tiny memory that she would then get kind of excited about, like a little kid, and then say, and then this, and then this, and then that, and then da. And afterwards, she was pretty peaceful. But then we would go long periods of not talking. And then I would say, do you want to talk? And then she would say, okay, but we're not going to remember anything else. And it went like that. I managed to, in my desire to work for the United Nations, my family and I moved to Italy during the pandemic. And so I was with her. She was in Rome with us. So I talked to her on the Zoom, and then on the WhatsApp, and then in person, and now back on WhatsApp.
I was thinking about, there are people who include time as another sense, you know, like you. And I was thinking about the use of time within the paintings and within the way that she discusses her existence. And we're very, you know, we Americans and Western Europeans are very tied to the concept of time as a linear.
Yeah.
But there are other cultures and other places where time is seen as circular, as everything all at once.
Everything all at once, yeah.
Yeah, and so, but thinking about time as a sense, and thinking about all the other senses, when young painters learn to paint, there's this emphasis on looking and sight and And it's important, I'm not gonna say it's not important, but do you have any sort of recommendation for young artists? Like how do you paint with other senses in mind and not just, and maybe even time, but not just sight? Like sight's important, but it's not everything.
I agree with you, and I think about it. I'm fascinated with the idea that we are painting and that our sight's connected to our sensation of time and our smell and our hearing, and that maybe we're connected to everything all at once. I don't have any recommendation. I don't know how to do it. I can say that when I'm out drawing, I'm thinking about those things. She was really specific, and she definitely grew up partly, I know, in Rangoon and Bangkok. So I do think that she must have been influenced by some Asian or specifically Buddhist ideas of time, because she said that the memories that we stack up to make a timeline are these events, and we generally stack them in our minds forward. But she remembers the events, and then she remembers things happening in all directions. So just like she remembers this explosion, then she remembers going to this magical city after the explosion, but we know that she was younger when she went. But she's like, that's correct. I was younger and I went after the explosion. So maybe if we weren't so tied to this linear timeline, she wouldn't be so confused. Because in fact, when she starts talking about these things, she has all of these memories. She just can't stack them the way that we assume they should be stacked.
What's interesting is now they believe that they've found evidence that there are genetic memories.
That we have genetic memories, and that they're finding like emotional memories from generations past, and like particularly with
Trauma.
Yeah, trauma.
Okay, so she said she went to 4 doctors that all made her mad, who said that so she remembers from before she was born. She remembers that there was this woman she called grandmother, and nearly all of these doctors told her that this is a trauma she has to get rid of. Right, so it's a ghost, it's a dead person that's connected to her, and these are like top PhDs in their fields. You would not believe the things that were told to her. And, she's humble, she listened, but in the end she said, but this just doesn't make any sense to me. There's nothing, this woman that I remember isn't dead, and she's not scary, and she's not a ghost. She just happens to be here. I happen to have remembered her when I was little. Why is this, incompatible with? But of course, in their minds, she can't remember because she has this trauma and she needs to get rid of the trauma. And then this woman from before she was born will disappear. And that's kind of when she came to me, when she was just fed up with that idea. But yes, we have a lot of ideas that we have memories from past lives. But I don't think we have really ventured into like a curious, open, beautiful way of looking at it. Right? Like she keeps saying to me, but it's not a trauma.
This may relate in some way to Jennifer's question. Your book, Quantum Art and the Mimesis Uncertainty. Would you speak to that book, in particular, the Mimesis Uncertainty part? And if there's a way you could add another chapter to that, what would it be based on what you've learned since you've written that book?
Okay, I'm going to keep this short because I know that we are close to our time and I can probably talk about this for hours. So here's my book. I already added another chapter. I won't add another chapter. It's one of the few things that's done. I made a second edition. John Berger read it, gave me ideas. I was rethinking things, rewriting some things. I'll give you the nutshell summary of it. I followed what I can find, which has been written about the process of copying, word that artists don't like, our scientific understanding of the physical world, and our common sense understanding of what art is. I followed those things as far back as I could, which is maybe 1,000 years before year zero. Plato a little earlier, right? And what I concluded is that in the past 100 years, we've discovered quantum physics, but the quantum physics has not infiltrated our worldview. And if we looked at quantum physics and its possibilities and let it influence our worldview, it would in fact change the common sense beliefs we have about art and specifically mimesis, copying. And I would say that we're copying all the time, whether we're copying our imagination, we're copying our memories, we're copying the world that we're in, the very process of making another. And so I think that it opens up a lot of possibilities for us if we were to allow our worldview to be opened by quantum physics, which basically tells us, and here's the really short way of saying it, that when we observe the world, it becomes static. So when I look at you, you're in one place. As soon as I'm not observing the world, it's a wave. So we're living in a wave of uncertainty that's happening everywhere all the time. And when we observe, and the thing is that the world is also observing us, so we're not in control of this. So I'm observing you, and you're observing me. We create each other at that moment. So we're creating the world all the time by observing it. And when we are painting, we're basically going back and forth, which is why I think it feels so good. We're going back and forth between being in the wave and creating a moment, being in the wave and creating a moment. But the important thing to know is that the world itself is not static. It's just that when we observe it, we make it static. I love my dreams to be able to see the world in its wave state. So if I was to write another chapter, it'd be about how we could possibly see the world without it. I'm also curious about philosophies that happened way pre-Christian in Africa, in Mesopotamia, that have not yet been translated. But I don't speak those languages, so I gotta figure that out. Not because I think everything that passed is fascinating. I just think it's happening everywhere, all at the same time. And that there's some more ideas to touch in back there. So I've been touching my feet, like who could translate those ancient texts, maybe the friends in Mosul.
So has recreating these memories helped her?
She has not said to me that it helped her. Yet she keeps chatting with me and finding new stuff.
Thank you so much for this lovely story. And this definitely very powerful work. I was thinking so much through this conversation just about different ways of knowing. And it seems like she was born with this, like you said, these genetic memories, ancestral knowledge. And I wonder if she at a time where she's almost meant to forget this daylight and remember these things that are supposed to be brought into culture now. And does she look at it like this? Does she feel like this is a gift? Or
No, I agree with you. It seems like a gift. I think she's just like, this is kind of exhausting. But then I think that she enjoys seeing her memories, visualized in front of her. I think to some extent it seems like her dream life is more real, but she's got to slog through this daylight, which is where I see her. Maybe if I met her in the dream life, she would say what you're saying.
I mean, I feel like this project would just really jump off into so much.
Yes, but she has to collaborate with me, and every day is a new choice. So we'll see how far it goes.
I have a question about the ways that you're speaking about, not being able to perceive them, but there's
Okay, I just missed the first part of your
Oh,
sentence.
the waves, like you're
The
talking
waves,
about,
okay,
the
yes.
observing and the seeing. Can you talk a little bit about that more?
The quantum physics aspect of wave particle duality, this business.
Yeah.
I will try, but I'm not, I feel like if you've got a physicist in the room, they're gonna tell me that I've said it kind of wrong, but we have some pretty clear experiments that show us that if we emit light, it goes in a wave. And if we don't look at it, we can see evidence that it went in a wave. And when we look at it, it will become a particle. So they've done an experiment where it's called the double slit experiment. I don't know if you guys have heard about this. I don't want to butcher it, but so there's a light that goes out, let's say towards you guys, and then there's like a wall, and there's 2 holes in the wall. And when we emit the light but don't observe it, it seems to go through both those holes and then have a pattern of wave against the back wall that it hits. When we observe it, it will go through one slit or the other slit and hit the back wall in a point. How is that happening? We don't know. There's also a thing called entanglement that seems to be that these particles can communicate with each other as if they have observed each other, seen each other, or interacting with each other across space and time. So instead of thinking like we do, like I touch you because I'm here in the same place as you, and you feel that, these particles seem to be connected even if they're at different time periods and even if they're at different parts of the galaxy, like they are interacting with each other. How is that possible? But not crazy artists. Scientists are telling us that this is true. We have apparently seen something that is acting like a wave and a particle at the same time. I haven't seen pictures. I don't understand how they're doing that, but I have read that they have done that. I'm fascinated. I tried to get into a program to study quantum physics in India, and I got in, but I could not move to India. But I would love to go and do that. Also, my PhD program is in Switzerland, near Geneva. Underneath Geneva is the CERN circle, in which they're throwing particles in the circle and trying to figure out what the heck they're doing. So I've been fascinated with that as well.
I just thought this whole thing was really interesting, especially the letter when she was talking about being like millions of years old before that. And it's like, I don't know, it's just really interesting to me because I feel like in certain aspects with the time thing and the consciousness thing, I can relate. And I was just wondering what you think of like her more so being like a conduit for ideas that are coming into her head from that consciousness that we all share, if you get what I'm saying.
My really basic guess, because obviously I don't know, is that we are all connected to all of the time as far back as the universe is and as far forward as the universe is. And that probably if we let go of our beliefs about the specific physical static nature of our lives, we would probably be connected to them in the same way that she is. I think she probably feels a little bit like, what's wrong with you all? This is obvious. Do you have another question?
Yeah, it's more so a question just for you.
Yeah.
You said she doesn't tell people that type of stuff. And like, I get it because like you tell people there and they're like, oh, shut up. But like sometimes like you fall asleep like she does and you have the dreams and you'll be sleeping for 8 hours and it'll feel like you just lived for like 7 months.
Yeah.
And do you think that more people have this and they just don't talk about it because everyone tells you to shut up?
I do. Yeah, I would love for her to share that story because I think a lot of people will recognize themselves in it, but I can understand her shyness.
All right. Thank you, Amber.